wants them to keep going and does not want them to drop those efforts, even though, despite what the president did earlier today, holding that rally, of course, resulted in what we saw this afternoon on Capitol Hill.
All right, Caitlin Collins, thanks so much. And again, President Trump, it pretty clearly seems to be President Trump who is encouraging a mob, an insurrection to storm the Capitol, threatening Democrats and Republicans alike. Somebody left a pipe bomb outside the Republican National Committee headquarters today. President Trump has not had one discouraging word to say about any of this. And in many ways, we should not be surprised. This is somebody who had a supporter, Cesar Sayoc, who mailed pipe bombs to Democrats and to media organizations. This is somebody who both sides in terms of the white supremacist march in Charlottesville. Jim Acosta also covers the Trump administration, the Trump White House for us. And Jim, I think there are a lot of calls right now from Republicans, including a former Republican.
Nation's capital today. A curfew is in effect as we speak in Washington. You wouldn't know it, though, if you just looked at the live pictures. You still have pro-Trump groups and mobs in the streets, standoff with police. We are also learning that today's insurrection has turned deadly. A woman was pronounced dead at a hospital after apparently being shot on Capitol grounds. Amidst this, and at this hour, we can now confirm the entire D.C. National Guard has been activated, and they're going to be joined by the Virginia State Police and Maryland troopers, as well as up to 500 members of the National Guard of the state of Maryland. The images that we all saw today in front of our eyes were unbelievable. It's not something anybody ever expected to see in the United States. Anarchists breaking the glass of the United States Capitol, breaking in, then entering. It is the first time that the U.S. Capitol has been breached since the British attacked and burned the building in August of 14 during the War of 1812. And then inside an armed standoff. This image I found breathtaking when I saw it on the door of the floor of the House. This image in the United States, guns drawn, pointed at the door of the People's House. And a protester on the Senate floor, where just hours earlier, Vice President Mike Pence was sitting while the Senate was in the midst of counting the electoral votes. And now we have just learned, and in a significant development here, Congress not going home for the night after all of this, after all the evacuations and the fear. They are coming back. They are set to resume that count next hour. And then this image. Trump supporter breaking into House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office, feet in her desk, kicking back, leaving that note, "We will not back down." Now, this violence was sparked by the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, who rallied that crowd earlier today.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
And they listened to their leader. They marched on the Capitol. They stormed it. They broke in. And the president is even now defending the mob attack, saying, and I quote him, "These are things that happen when a sacred landslide victory is stripped away." It's just, right, it's crazy. It's a lie. It's untrue. And this is just what happens? No, it's never happened. As flashbangs were heard at the Capitol, Trump then released a video pouring even more gasoline on the fire, claiming that the election was stolen. That's what he did, put out a video. Alex Marquardt is on the ground in Washington near the Capitol. And Alex, we are now an hour into the curfew and an hour ahead of Congress saying they're going to come back in session and continue with this electoral college count. Where do things stand right now?
Aaron, we're an hour into the curfew, and we still have a lot of people who are out here. We're about 5 hours since this insurrection first started, since we watched rioters blow through a police line, make their way up the western steps of the Capitol and into the Capitol building. Just an absolutely surreal scene. Now, in the lead up to the curfew, we did see, finally, for much of the afternoon, we were asking ourselves, where's the cavalry? Where's the law enforcement that's going to push these rioters out? They did appear a short time ago, and I'm just going to show you the law enforcement presence here. This is a long line of officers from different agencies who have managed to push these protesters, many of them rioters, many of them not rioters, away from the western side of the Capitol. What you're looking at there, Aaron, is Metropolitan Police from Washington, D.C. Those are the ones in those green vests. You also have members of the D.C. National Guard. We have now learned that the entire D.C. National Guard has been mobilized. They are there in the middle of that crowd. You can see them right there with their tall plastic riot shields. And they are engaged in what is essentially a standoff with the remnants of this protest, of this riot. I would say it is the more hardcore element, because these are the ones who have been defying law enforcement's orders to leave, defying the mayor's orders to go home. So there is still a significant contingent of them out here now, more than an hour after this curfew has gone into effect. I should also say that the FBI is out here as well. It has been relatively peaceful since the curfew went into effect. There had been some tear gas fired, but we have not seen, we really should note, we have not seen the kind of violent reaction from the law enforcement side that we saw during the George Floyd protests, during the Black Lives Matter protests, when we saw lots of tear gas fired, lots of pepper spray, those pepper balls. And so it has been a much lighter hand put on these protesters here this afternoon. As you know well, Aaron, as night falls, things can often turn and get more violent. It remains to be seen whether that is going to happen now. But the curfew is fully in effect, and the law enforcement is out here. They have managed to clear the entire western side of the Capitol, pushing these protesters away from the Capitol building that was invaded earlier today. Aaron.
All right, Alex, thank you very much. I know you and I are not so many reporters who've been in other places in the world. It's amazing to see these images here. I sort of, it's still just dumbfounding. Manu Raju is out front on Capitol Hill. And Manu, you know, amidst this, they now, you're reporting, say they're going to resume that joint session, not going to put it off till tomorrow. They're going to come back. Which is important, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So, you know, as this started, right, you had Lankford objecting, and all of a sudden, right, Mitch McConnell broke in, and we're going in recess, and now that's it. But a lot just happened. So what's going to happen tonight? Are they just going to continue with the same planned objections and the same planned thing, or could something dramatically change?
That's the big question right now, is how long these proceedings will go, Aaron. There is a lot of pressure on these Republican objectors to essentially drop their objections, not move forward. Remember how this actually has to play out. If one House Republican objects and one Senate Republican objects, then each chamber will recess for up to 2 hours each. They'll have a debate over these electoral results that are coming in state by state. And after 2 hours or so, there'll be a vote that could take another 1 to 2 more hours in addition to cleaning the chamber. And this could go on for some time if there are several more states that will be objected to. The question is, will they go forward with that? Because given this is a completely doomed effort, it has absolutely no chance of succeeding in the Capitol. A bipartisan majority in both the House and the Senate plan to reject any efforts to throw out electoral votes that were awarded to Joe Biden. And after today's display, more and more Republican senators say it is time to move on. It is time. This is what happened, in their view, is a disgraceful act. They said it's time to come together, and there's pressure to expedite the proceedings. Now, will those senators go along is the question. One of the senators, Josh Hawley of Missouri, has indicated he plans to object to the state of Pennsylvania's electoral votes. Uncertain if he continues to do that. Also, Georgia, Kelly Loeffler, the defeated appointed senator from Georgia, had indicated last night she planned to come back here and object to her state's electoral votes that have been awarded to Joe Biden. Will she continue with that? Also uncertain. But the hope among the Republican leaders and Democratic leaders is that they will sense that this is a moment where the country needs to come together, where the Congress needs to come together and send a message that our elections are free and fair and it's time to move forward. Now, behind the scenes,
They actually removed it. These are things that happen. Well, they're not things that happen, but what was happening with him today?
Well, and I do just want to note in light of what you just said, Aaron, about them removing the president's tweet, they also just tweeted saying that his account will be locked for the next 12 hours following the removal of those tweets. That means we will not hear from the president on Twitter. It says if the tweets are not removed, the account will remain locked. That is the president of the United States Twitter account. they're talking about. And so that means we may not hear from the president, because just a few moments ago, the White House also called a lid, which means there are not going to be any more presidential appearances planned for the night. And that comes after a day where the president was wavering between telling this pro-Trump mob that breached the Capitol to go home, but Aaron also defending them and saying he understands where they're coming from, and this is what's going to happen when an election has been stolen, like he claims, of course, falsely, that his has. And we know this mob was fueled by the president's lies about the election, and now he is defending their actions today, breaching the Capitol, something that has not happened in over 200 years. And in light of what Manu just said about, while we're waiting to see what these lawmakers are doing as they're getting back together, are we going to see any more of those planned objections by the president's Republican allies? I'm told the president is aware of those efforts, those discussions going on, that they may abandon this effort, and he does not want them to do so. He wants them to keep fighting, to keep trying to object to Joe Biden's win, delaying, of course, the inevitable, but just the idea that the president wants that to keep happening, despite what we all watched play out for the last several hours and is still happening on Capitol Hill, is remarkable. And it's coming as the president is more isolated probably than ever tonight inside the White House, because his staff is disagreeing with him about his response to this. Some of his Republican allies are disagreeing with the president on what's happening with this. His own staffers are coming out saying that they agree with the vice president and that he took courageous actions today. So you're seeing the president incredibly isolated. Now he doesn't have access to his Twitter account until at least 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. And we are not expecting to see him again at the White House for tonight, Aaron.
It's a pretty stunning development, though, for him, because as Caitlin is making clear, right, that's how he was going to communicate. That's how he always does communicate. He calls a lid because he can still keep communicating. So the president now blocked from Twitter for the next 12 hours. I want to go to Donie O'Sullivan live outside the Capitol. And Donie, you, I know, have been speaking to protesters throughout the day. And everybody wants to know who these people are. What are they doing? What are they planning to do now? What are they telling you?
Yeah, Aaron, I mean, I guess one of the questions I've been asking people here is, you know, what is all of this for? What was all of this chaos and destruction and violence we saw today? What is it all supposed to achieve? And that goes back to conspiracy theories. It goes back to the notion, the BS that the President of the United States is pushing, claiming that he might be able to overturn this election, which, of course, he will not be able to. So people here, and Caitlin mentioned about the President's social media Twitter account being locked for the next 12 hours, which is an absolutely unprecedented move. We have not seen that from any social media company in the entire Trump presidency. But all of this does go back to social media and to the Trump media ecosystem. The people here are consuming media. They want to believe that Trump did not lose the election. They don't want to believe that Biden won it. And there is echo chambers online, and there are new and emerging alternative media outlets on YouTube, and even new cable ostensibly posing as news networks, forwarding this election lie. And that's the basis of what we've seen here today. It's all a result of a conspiracy theory, and it's playing out on the streets of the nation's capital. Aaron?
All right, Donie, thank you very much. Donie's reporting, talking.
Police, and I could see it then, but no, I never foresaw this. And what went through my mind was two things. First of all, like I said, to get in touch with the people I know at the Pentagon, make sure, because I had heard what they were going to do with the Guard, and it was insufficient to what was happening. So number one, make sure we get the security personnel in to get this cleared. But number two, what was going through my mind is what's been going through my mind for a long time. Extremism is an enormous problem in this country. And Donald Trump is just, throwing matches all over, the powder kegs in this country. Look, the president, Donald Trump, is a narcissistic psychopath. Let's just be clear about that. He stumbled his way into the presidency. What he believes from a policy standpoint is irrelevant. He is an egotist. He cares about himself, period. The rest of the country that has enabled him is what we really need to work to fix. We need to understand the dangers of extremism. We've gotten to the point that we don't understand that the rule of law matters. What's important about democracy is you have rules. You play by those rules. It isn't that you get your way all the time, and that if you don't get your way, you have to fight until you do. That's not how it works. You play by the rules, and when it's over, you accept the outcome and you govern this country. We need to push back against extremism. The president is just, yeah, you get the point. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I understand. I wanted to ask you, though, because you mentioned you talked to defense leadership, and obviously you're chairman of the Armed Services Committee. So, I just want to ask you, is the president really was silent, and anything that he said included basically, way to go, guys, this is what happens. Mike Pence came out and said, this has to stop, and it has to stop now. He's the one who said that, not the president. Yeah. And we understand that, you talk about the National Guard being there, that Mike Pence is the one who spoke with the acting Secretary of Defense and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, not the president. Right. It would ordinarily be the president of the United States who would do that. So can you tell me what you know actually happened, who made these calls, and what the significance of that may be?
Look, I can tell you exactly what happened. I don't know what Mike Pence's role was in it, but primarily this was the mayor of Washington, D.C., working directly with Ryan McCarthy, who is the Secretary of the Army. And it's complicated, but the Army is in charge of the National Guard within Washington, D.C., and so that's Secretary McCarthy. They were communicating with each other. As this thing exploded, the acting Secretary of Defense, Mr. Miller, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Milley, both of whom I spoke to, got involved. And then they got involved with the Justice Department. It's hard to keep track of all of the actings, but I believe the acting Attorney General is Mr. Rosen. And fortunately, all of those people decided that they needed to bring security to the situation. The one saving grace in all of this is that the president has totally abdicated his job. As near as I can tell, he wasn't on the phone to these same people.
Right, because you're saying he's not in this. You're talking about all these people making these huge decisions, and the president of the United States is not in that chain.
And here's the scary part about it, Aaron. That's reassuring to me, okay? Because if the president was involved in that chain, number one, I don't trust that he wouldn't use the situation to seize power in an undemocratic, well, every coup is undemocratic, I suppose. But number two, he's incompetent. He doesn't care about making things work. He cares about his own ego, and he cares about himself. And we see that, with the way he handled the pandemic, with the way he's handling the vaccine right now. And here's a really important point that people understand is he relies on lies. And that's what Ted Cruz and all these people are doing now. All these things that they say about election irregularities are complete lies, complete and utter fabrications.
So, Chairman, I want to just interrupt you on that, ask you one final question on that front. Have you heard anything about their meetings and their thoughts right now? Are they going to continue with their planned objections, or has this changed anything specifically for Senators Cruz, Senator Hawley?
I have not heard. I don't have any direct information on that. I think your reporting covered the analysis perfectly, so I don't have anything to add to that.
All right. Well, Chairman, I appreciate your time, and thank you very much for all of that information. We're all going to be watching all of you tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I want to go now to Jonathan Martin. He joins me on the phone. He is the national political correspondent for the New York Times, familiar to most of you. Of riot police there, with the plastic riot gear blockers up. I want to go to Brian Todd, who is in the midst of this melee that we're seeing. Brian, tell me what you understand to be happening right now where you are.
Aaron, some Metropolitan Washington Police and members of the National Guard who have riot gear and shields have just moved in right over here by the reflecting pond, just on the west side of the Capitol, about 200 yards from the Capitol. They had let the crowd stay there for several minutes, and then they just moved with shields and riot gear and pushed people out. This crowd of law enforcement officers in the green jackets of the Metropolitan Washington Police had formed a line to the left. They just pushed that line over, and they were chanting "move, move" to get the protesters to leave. So this could be, we don't know, of course, but this could be the final push that they're making to try to drive these people away. And as they did that, of course, people did start to melt away. To my right, people are just kind of leaving the area here. But actually, Eddie, if you want to just walk with me over here just a little bit, we do see a bit of a standoff where some people have stopped over here, and they're not pushing them further from that point, but they could soon, because they've been doing this in increments pretty much, both on the east side of the Capitol and here on the west side of the Capitol. They'll push them a little bit further, they'll stop, they'll let them congregate a little bit, and then they'll wait a little bit and then push them even further. But the crowds are getting smaller, and as you can see, more and more of them are starting to melt away. You know, this show of force is, right now, it looks pretty significant. But we got to say, as we've been saying all evening, it took them hours and hours to get here with these numbers of law enforcement. And for hours and hours, law enforcement here was completely overwhelmed. They were outnumbered. They allowed the rioters to get up the steps of the Capitol on both sides. They allowed them to climb up on a riser that had been built for the inauguration and wave flags. Now they're finally making this push. Now the key question is, what is going to happen overnight, and where will the security perimeter really be pushed to? One of the main streets of in the mall area is just over here. Are they going to push them past this main street area? So we're going to see what happens. We'll be monitoring this, of course, for the entire evening to see where the security perimeters are going to be pushed. But it's taken hours and hours for them to finally start to push people away from the main grounds of the Capitol. This is the reflecting pond right beyond them. And now people are starting to melt away a little bit. So a fairly dramatic push here. Is it the final one? I doubt it, because, again, they've been doing this in increments. And we will see if people will finally just kind of disperse. I can tell you that on the east side of the Capitol, when those protesters who had gone up the steps and gone inside and were on those steps in large masses for hours and hours, started to disperse, they did it on their own. They really didn't do it with any push from law enforcement or just until the very, very end. So, Aaron, this is the situation here on the west side of the Capitol. And as again, you can see law enforcement officers over here pushing them even further.
I mean, you see those.
Eddie, if you want to just pan to the right a little bit, we can see them. Eddie's going to, there you go. They're pushing them little by little even further. But, I mean, the numbers of rioters, protesters, whoever these people are at this point, are diminishing, and they are starting to melt away.
So let me ask you about that, because we see those lines, obviously, of the police, law enforcement. Brian, what's your sense of where these people came from and where they are melting away to? I mean, where do they have to go? I know some of them said they're going to stay there all night. There were, obviously, you had the mall full of people today. Where are they going?
Aaron, that's a very good question. I don't think we have a clear answer to that. Whether they're going to go to other pockets of town and start, small pockets of protest, resistance, what have you, or whether they're going to call it a night. This has unfolded in such an unpredictable way, and things have changed very dramatically, very quickly at various points of the day. We saw how quickly it all unraveled when they breached the barricades earlier on both sides of the Capitol and got inside. So, you get a sense that this is starting to diminish, that they're starting to melt away. Where they're going to go to, I've covered a lot of these types of events. It's almost impossible to determine where they're going to go to, or whether they're going to organize anywhere.
Right.
They through social media and other means, they can organize and say, hey, we're going to get together at this place at whatever 10 o'clock or whatever, and we'll have to figure that out when it happens. But there's no indication now where these people are going to go that we're aware of.
All right, so as we watch this with Brian and, of course, our reporters with these crowds throughout Washington, I want to go back to Caitlin Collins, because, Caitlin, you've got some new information on the vice president. We were just talking about how he's the one who had the conversations with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, with the acting secretary of defense, about the law enforcement here, not the president. And now you've learned more about where the vice president is right now, what he's doing.
We have, and I think it's raising real questions, as you just noted, about who is in charge here when it comes to the White House and who has been trying to facilitate their way out of this situation, and whether it's President Trump or the vice president, because we just got our first update from his spokesperson all day. The only other thing we had heard from the vice president was that forceful condemnation of what you're seeing happening on Capitol Hill, telling those protesters, those demonstrators, those rioters to go home. And now we have an update from his spokesperson saying that he has returned to the Senate. They said he never left the Capitol earlier today because, of course, Aaron, he was on the Senate floor when this pro-Trump mob breached the Capitol. And then he was escorted off the floor, we knew, taken to a secure location. But we did not know much else about his whereabouts. And so he still remained at the Capitol. But his spokesperson says he was in regular contact with the House and Senate leadership, Capitol Police, the Justice Department, and the Pentagon to facilitate efforts to secure the Capitol and reconvene Congress. They say we will finish the people's business tonight. And Aaron, that comes after that statement that we got from the Pentagon saying that they had been coordinating with the vice president about calling in the National Guard. It did not mention Donald Trump. Neither does this statement. It does not say that the vice president has spoken to President Trump in the last several hours. That is notable because, as we know with Vice President Pence, he does not take or miss an opportunity to praise the president, to talk about their relationship. And of course, as it's deteriorated, we are now seeing this. And I think it is raising legitimate questions about the president being isolated away in the White House, talking about what he wants to see, complaining about Pence not doing his bidding on Capitol Hill, about who is in charge of the federal government and who is streamlining these efforts to restore normal in the Capitol tonight.
It's pretty stunning. And the fact, Caitlin, as you point out, it's not just that we can say, oh, Trump's name isn't on there. The fact that they're putting out every single person and institutional head that Pence spoke to is making a very clear point. Right. It is a purposeful, loud and clear point. All right. So the vice president is there. He's on Capitol Hill. He never left. And now another development, a significant development. First Lady Melania Trump, her chief of staff, Stephanie Grisham, who has stood by her through thick and thin, right now submitting her resignation effective immediately. And a White House official is telling CNN the decision was motivated by these violent protests and what we all saw with shame today on Capitol Hill. I want to go to Kate Bennett, who broke this news. Kate, I mean, this is a very significant development. She has been loyal, right? An attack dog on behalf of the First Lady.
Right. And also, Aaron, she's been with the Trump administration before it was an administration. She was one of the first people on Trump's campaign press team back in 2015. So, you know, this is certainly a remarkable development that she has decided to resign. Granted, there are 2 weeks left in the administration. However, she's had a rocky few weeks. Sources tell me she has gone back and forth with this decision, and that today was certainly the tipping point for her to decide that her time with this administration and this White House is over, effective today.
Right. And Kate, I just want to make the point, right, as you say, she's been loyal. So this is the, you know, she could have had a much longer a job, et cetera, with this family, right? She is severing those ties, and she is doing so. It's very clear, right, because of how the president has handled his election loss.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a very contentious few months for Stephanie Grisham. She bounced to the West Wing, as we all saw. Then Mark Meadows came in, and all of a sudden she was back at the East Wing with Melania Trump. There have been lots of back and forth between East and West Wing. She wants to spend more time with her family. Again, there are all those reasons. However, I think it's really important to emphasize, with just 2 weeks left, the significance of this moment today, of watching what we all watched play out on television, and think that senior administration officials are watching it too. Our Kevin Liptak is reporting there are others in the West Wing, aides who are considering, this is it. This is my resignation. This could be what prompts it. Stephanie Grisham, of course, being the first one to actually make that decision, submit her letter to the First Lady, who sources tell me has accepted the resignation, and that it is taking part right away.
All right, Kate, thank you very much.
On the lawn here, ping an emergency alert going out to people's iPhones, reminding them of that 6 p.m. curfew tonight. Of course, we are now almost 2 minutes beyond, or 2 hours almost beyond that curfew. This emergency alert did go out earlier today, but obviously somebody has seen the need to push that out again. These folks don't seem to be going anywhere. And, you know, to Josh's and Evan's earlier point, you know, for supporters of the so-called law and order president, we've heard a lot of vitriol being thrown at the police here. A lot of these Trump supporters are not very happy that the police are moving them on, moving them from beyond the barricades that they broke down earlier today. We've heard them call the police traitors. We heard one man, as he was walked away, as he was being pushed away by police, saying, next time we're coming back with rifles. Aaron?
Okay. All right. Doni, thank you very much. Let me just go to the Washington, D.C. Attorney General Karl Racine. Attorney General, I just want to give you a chance to respond to what we just heard Doni reporting, you know.
Well, racial, multi-ethnic, multi-generational group of protesters were going to, quote, storm the Capitol. Then juxtapose that with what we saw today with hate groups, militia, and others who clearly had no concern for the rule of law, go up to the Capitol and essentially get in. There'll be other days in recriminations and oversight to see exactly what happened, but that